Hashtag worst president ever. Donald Trump got ranked as the worst president by the official rankings from many expert historians. But when I think about it, Ronald Reagan did more lasting damage to my life and probably your life than Donald Trump did so far. He permanently took Americans off the gold standard and relabeled it trickle down economics, which allowed the government to go into these endless wars. That's what that was intended for in the first place during Vietnam. All these wars have come at your expense. The dollar you earn just goes less and less far, which has opened the door for all these bad types of racism and Nazism where people are poor, they can't figure out why, they just look for the simple solution. They don't want to think about Ronald Reagan, they just go straight to some minority or immigrant's fault. And that was in addition to permanently doing huge damage to the Union. While Reagan is credited with the fall of the Soviet Union and everything, well, when you look at it, the rise of Walmart happened during his time, and that meant the destruction of small businesses, the beginning of making everything a monopoly, and opening the door. Everything started to be made in China because, Walmart imports all their products from China. That's how Reagan always did everything. On the public, he's like, oh, communism falling. Then behind the scenes, they're installing Walmart, the state-run communist entity, opening the trade so that every U.S. manufacturer is moved to China. And not only that, as we know, there is this idea that Ronald Reagan used the CIA to sell crack to Americans. You look back at that time, it's hard to find someone who wasn't impacted in some way by the huge cocaine surge, while simultaneously he's saying, oh, war on drugs. And as we know, that money went to Iran in the Iran-Contra affair. All that ended up stirring up this trouble in the Middle East. And, with the fiat currency, it allowed us to be in this 20-year war, what seemed like an endless war, which resulted in people being impoverished in the United States. But in comparing Reagan and Trump, it's really going to come down to one thing. Was this whole thing about the COVID origins, does it turn out to be true? Because what you had is someone from the Trump administration saying, not only did this happen on Trump's watch, it was with his budgets, using his administration's institutions to fund it. So if that turns out to be true in the end, if we ever do find out, and even worse if it was supposed to target minorities, because the people involved in this, some of them, their background is being experts in the genetic differences between races, which really gives a bad picture. So I'm going to have to see, is there ever any answer on that to determine who's worse, Reagan or Trump? If I assume that's a conspiracy theory, then Reagan actually did more permanent damage to American citizens than Trump. Unless you're one of the people who died from his coronavirus stupidity and making the decision that, oh, stock market versus people living, definitely stock market, go to work, don't stay home, don't wear a mask. So for now, I'm putting the world's largest crack dealer in a worse position than Donald Trump. When I think about all this, there's never been a bullet fired at the most perfect time and location than John Hinckley Jr. I think that he was able to see some sort of parallel space-time continuum in a world without Ronald Reagan and into the future. And I think what's going on here is we're actually living in the wrong timeline. Somehow, some way, Jodie Foster really would have been his girlfriend or wife in the other timeline, and the life of you and me would be way better. In closing, Ronald Reagan was the one who made this the only actual real business in the United States. This is the money printing system where your whole life, your wealth can be determined by whether you're close to the Federal Reserve or your dad's a banker. And the only real business in the communist modern fake capitalism, crony capitalism, which is just a synonym for communism, is the money printing system.